imagine that you have a bank account which gives you $86,400 every morning when you wake up. It's yours to do with whatever you want, spend how you want, give to whoever you want. But here's the hitch. Every night, whatever you didn't spend is removed. And the next day you start out with a brand new balance of $86,400. In reality, you do have such an account, but its currency isn't money, it's time. Every day you are given 86,400 seconds to spend as you please. But at midnight, whatever you didn't spend is gone. Question: what are you doing with the time that you've been given? The clock is running.
We've been in this series called Time, and I was so excited when we started planning it and looking at it because I knew exactly kind of the contribution that I felt like God had put on my heart for this series. And it has to do with our busy lives. Like when we start talking about time, I think immediately about how busy life is. We had a child recently, and I thought, wow, I don't know if life can get any busier. And then I look at families around me who have 2, 3, 4 kids, and it's like, oh my goodness, I don't really understand how you do it. It's amazing. And our lives are so busy. So we got to lay it out here, right? So what does it look like for you? I want you to imagine, think through your schedule. Now, I'm not trying to give you a case of the Sunday scaries, where you're thinking all about the week and it's like, oh my goodness, now I can't sleep. I start out the week on Monday morning like I haven't slept a wink because I've been thinking about the week. I call that's the Sunday scaries. And so I don't want you to get that. But think about your week. For us, our week looks a little bit like this. You know, I got the gym on Monday morning. We start off strong, like the week hasn't begun. I get a reset over the weekend. So we get that in. Then maybe we get a little bit of quiet time with the Lord, right? On Monday, my routines and rhythms are intact. They're doing pretty well. Get a little bit of quiet time with the Lord. Then you arrive at work, and Monday mornings are all about looking at the schedule and going, whoa, I got a week. Like, oh my goodness, how in the world am I going to get all of this done? So you prioritize, you start to put things in place. And then if you're doing really good on Monday, you get out of work and you return home, and now it's like time to be at home, right? Or I got to be with the family. I got to be with my spouse. And if we're really excelling, we put the phone away, right? We get home and we put the phone away, and that lasts for about 15 minutes. And then it's like, oh man, I got a text, or like I kind of got bored, so I got to look up a YouTube video or something like that. And we fill our time. And then if we're really doing excellent, we play catch with our kids, or we go on a date with our spouse. I don't know, Monday date, maybe we do that. We spend time with them, and we're doing really, really great. And then bedtime rolls around at 7:30 sharp, and the after party begins. That's when Sierra and I get to hang out and have fun and have a good night and watch a movie or catch up on the latest Chosen series. And then the week continues. Tuesday, work. Maybe work goes late. It's a long day. Wednesday, I'm doing really good. I showed up to the gym, but maybe my Bible study, I didn't get that done. But I'm going to serve at church on Wednesday night. So I go to church on Wednesday night, and my week is really busy. Then Thursday rolls around, and I am physically exhausted. Oh my goodness. Like, I don't know, what point in the week for you? Where is it that you just are like, oh, I don't have anything left? And you return home and watch TV or do whatever it is. Maybe it's you have a hot tub out back and you got to go sit in your hot tub, and we physically relax. We do something good. Friday rolls around, the weekend's here, and we're almost there. We're a little bit rejuvenated. And we're doing really great. So we finish out work, and then we go out for pizza with the family. Like, oh man, we're going to go and do something really good. We have pizza on Friday because ain't nobody want to cook on Friday. And then ice cream afterwards. And it's been a busy week. It's been full of so many good things. So many great things. I don't know what your week looks like, but I bet there are a lot of great things that you do. And at the end, if you're like me, I often feel drained. I've rested. I've taken some time to heal my body. But at the end of the week, it's like, man, I'm just drained. The tank is on empty. And I think that the Lord has some really great principles for us to think about when it comes to keeping the tank full, to keeping ourselves from being drained at the end of the week. After all, right, the Christian life is supposed to look really great. It's supposed to be really powerful and exciting. And if we're coming to the end of every week and it's so draining and it's like, oh my goodness, I can't do this anymore, something must be missing. The Bible talks about in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 19 through 20, it talks about how filling this life should be. It says that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine according to his power. The writer is talking about how we as Christians are supposed to live a life that is filled to the brim with the fullness of the power of God. And yet Friday rolls around and it's like, I've just been so busy, I'm drained. The tank's low. The spiritual, the emotional tank can begin to be low. And I think what happens here is we've missed out on this principle that today I'm going to call margin. And Jesus models margin in the Bible. It talks about this in Luke chapter 5, verse 15 through 16. It says this, "Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that the crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sickness. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places." He withdrew to margin. Talks about this in Mark chapter 3, verse 14 through 15. It wasn't just Jesus. His disciples were a part of this practice. It says this, "He appointed 12 that they may be with him, that he may send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons." The disciples were with Jesus before they went out and did things for Jesus. Margin is a bit different than rest. We live in a culture that has kind of really improved, right? Like the grind has kind of subsided, and we have this thing where we're working on being healthy, and we've really developed a healthy rest patterns for some of us. Like it's not just always rise and grind. Like we kind of understand that we have to take care of our bodies and all of this, but margin is different than physical rest. Margin is intentional. I like this. Margin is the space we create to prioritize being before doing. So as we talk about margin today, I want you to think in your mind, it is the space we create to prioritize being before doing. And the unfortunate truth is that many of us who are followers of Jesus, many of us who are living our lives are doing so many great things and doing, and it leads to many followers of Jesus that are chronically overextended and doing more for Jesus than their inner life could ever sustain. You want to know why pastors are having moral failures after moral failures? You see all these things in the news. It's like this great leader just fell. I think what's happening is not that they woke up one day and went, wow, I want to destroy my life. I think what happened is their inner life no longer could sustain the doing that they were living, the doing and the doing and the doing. And so margin is taking a minute to step back and look at our inner life and say, wow, am I being with Jesus enough that it's developing my inner life so that I can sustain the things that I'm doing? The practice of margin means that we have to slow down spiritually. It can feel a little bit uncomfortable. It can feel like, man, wow, I'm like going back to the basics. Maybe I've been following Jesus for a really long time, and I've just been doing and doing and doing, and out of nowhere, I realize I haven't done any being lately. Or maybe you're new to following Jesus, and it seems like there are all of these great opportunities to do incredible things. And you want to dive in and jump in, and you do something really incredible, and you're part of it, and it gives you a little bit of fuel. It does. Doing great things, a little bit of fuel. But there's something that is missing, and it's that like rocket fuel to life. It's the power of God walking with you, and it feels like there's something missing there. And I say that maybe we need to take a look at the inner life. Pete Scazzaro describes these two things, and they're the kind of goals that we're looking to achieve. We want to set the bar. We want to take a look. What does it look like when our inner life is intact? What does it look like when our inner life is together? And I would say two things. One, we have emotional fullness, and two, we have spiritual fullness. When we have those two things, our inner life is intact. Our inner life is together, and it's full. Going back to that Ephesians passage, we have the fullness of God within us. So he describes it like this. Let's take a look at what the bar should be. Emotional fullness is this. It is manifested primarily by a high level of awareness of their feelings, their weaknesses, and their limits, how their past impacts their present, and how others experience them. They have the capacity to enter into their feelings and perspectives of others, and they carry these maturities with them into everything they do. This is a person displaying emotional fullness. A person with spiritual fullness is this. Spiritual fullness reveals itself in a healthy balance between their being with God and their doing for God. They're careful not to engage in more activities than their spiritual, physical, and emotional reserves can sustain. They receive from God more than they do for him. They enjoy the Jesus they share with others. They establish regular and sustainable rhythms that make it possible to handle the demands and pressures of leadership. Their cup with God is full, not empty, because they are constantly receiving the love they offer to others. And when their life begins to feel depleted, they have the ability to pivot and adjust their schedules. They recognize their presence with God, themselves, and others as their greatest gift and contribution to those they lead. Because of this, they carry an unrelenting commitment to not allow their doing to exceed their being. This is the bar of spiritual fullness and emotional fullness. And this was an essential practice of the disciples. It wasn't just Jesus. The early church took this and they wove it into the way that they interacted with one another, the way that they lived. It says this in Acts chapter 6, verse 2 through 4. It says, "So the 12 gathered all the disciples together and said, 'It would not be right for us to neglect the ministry of the word in order to wait on tables. Brothers and sisters, choose 7 men from among you who are known to be full of the Spirit and wisdom. We will turn this responsibility over to them and will give our attention to prayer and ministry of the word.'" Notice the people that were selected met a certain criteria. It wasn't that they were great, it wasn't that they had all the skills. It was that they were full of the Spirit. Man, my heart today for you is that you are full of the Spirit. That you live a life that is so full of God that it impacts every realm of your life. That it carries you and your tank is continually being filled up so that you can give generously. You can love big. You can love without offense. Man, that's powerful. That's powerful. Today, I want to kind of look at how do we know? How do we know if we need to give this area of our life some attention? What are some questions that we can ask ourselves and say, man, maybe my doing has exceeded my being. So here's some things that we can ask ourselves. Maybe you relate to some of these. The first one is this: I can't shake the pressure I feel from having too much to do and too little time. I am ignoring the stress, anxiety, and tightness of my body. I'm concerned with what others think. I'm often fearful about the future. I'm always rushing. I'm defensive and easily offended. I'm preoccupied and distracted. I fire off quick opinions and judgments. I feel unenthusiastic about or threatened by the success of others. And lastly, I spend more time talking than listening. Now, maybe you're saying, man, I fit some of those. I felt some of those. Perhaps maybe you feel some of those later in the week, like Thursday or Friday, than you do on Monday. I know for me, it's kind of rhythmic. Some of the times I feel that a little bit more than others. But those are some good things to ask ourselves, man, is my inner life keeping up? Where does my inner life land? And this is where I think God has something to teach us. I'm going to give you 4 thoughts on how to be with God before doing. 4 thoughts on how we make this now a regular practice of our life, so that we're not in these positions, but we're living with the fullness of the Spirit, empowered by God to live this awesome life. The first one is this: you need to make a radical decision. Now, radical decisions are radical, right? When we first got married, Sia and I were like, we got to do the thing that couples do when you get married. You know what it is? You got to get a puppy. This is a terrible choice. Don't do it. So we were tempting. We were playing with the fire. So we started looking online. Oh, we'll just look. Oh, let's make a date out of it. Let's go play with the puppies. Don't. Fire will burn you. We went to go and play with the puppies. And we played. They were so nice. They were in a barn. They needed love. And we walked away with a brand new puppy in a 3rd-story, 1-bedroom apartment. And the puppy just struggled, man. This puppy, he could not understand the difference between, when he would go to the bathroom in our apartment and the minute and a half it would take to get him all the way to the grass patch. He just did not get it. He chewed that apartment all the pieces. We were working a lot at the time, and we weren't able to be home. He destroyed it, and I left that apartment with a fat bill. So big. Because of a radical decision. And 4 years later, I still have that radical decision living in my house. He's just so wonderful, man. He's the best. It takes a radical decision to say, God, I'm going to put being with you in front of doing. Talks about this in Mark chapter 10, verse 20 through 23. This man had come to Jesus and he asked about him, how he could have eternal life, and he's talking to God, and it's the story of the rich young ruler. And the story picks up here. It says, "Teacher," he declared, "all these I have kept since I was a boy." He's talking about the commandments of God. "All these I have kept since I was a boy." Jesus looked at him and loved him. Jesus is still looking and loving. He said, "Go sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." At this, the man's face fell. He went away sad because he had great wealth. Jesus looked around and said to the disciples, "How hard is it for the rich to enter the kingdom of God?" Now, there's several things that are going on in this passage, but I want to focus in on one. The rich young ruler came to Jesus and he wanted to be with him. He wanted to walk with him. He wanted to follow after him. And he explained to Jesus, "I've been doing all of these great things. I've been keeping the commands since I was a boy." And Jesus said one more thing. I want your identity. You see, he had been doing so many great things, but he had held on to one thing that defined him, his wealth. And Jesus said, no, in order to follow me, I want everything. I want the entirety of who you are. It's a decision of saying, no, I'm going to set down all of the things that have defined me. I'm going to set down whether it's wealth, whether it's social status, whether it's my amazingness as a person. I'm going to set down all of the great things that I've done for the Lord, and I'm going to place my identity with Jesus. None of that matters anymore. None of that defines me anymore. I'm defined by one thing and one thing only, him. The Bible describes it in a moment in Corinthians. It talks about how our hearts are laid bare before him. It can be painful. It can be difficult. It is a radical decision to place our identity in him. But man, does it open up an amazing world, because now we're living with the one who created us, the way that he intended for us to live. It's a place of fullness. It's a place of life. The second is this: it's to feel your feelings. Many times we're taught not to do the bad feelings. Like there's a distinction. There's like the feelings of happiness and I don't know, laughter and excitement and joy. And we just have all these other feelings over here. But then there's like the bad feelings, the ones where you feel maybe angry or sad or jealous. And those are kind of categorized over here in the bad feelings. And we're taught not to really experience those. And I think in order for us to deal with our inner life, in order for us to hand over everything to God, in order for us to be with him, we have to bring the entirety of who we are. Everything. The feelings that are kind of yucky. Jesus wants those too. Jesus wants us to bring the entirety of who we are. It requires us to answer hard questions, to answer the questions, why am I in a hurry? Maybe to answer, why am I so impatient? To answer, what is all of this anxiety about? To dig down beyond the surface and say, wow, we are a being created with emotions, and I'm going to dig down and I'm going to figure out why it is that I'm feeling all these things. I had to do that early in marriage. We went grocery shopping for the first couple times as a couple, and we had just been married, just moved to a new apartment, and we go grocery shopping, and we return from grocery shopping, third floor apartment, and I got all those groceries up in one trip. It's very important. Only one trip. And so I'm excited. I've done it. I've brought all these groceries up, and so I'm going to do the great thing, and I'm going to start putting them away. And I start putting the groceries away one by one, and I put them in the pantry in a way that makes sense to me. And then Sierra came behind me, and she started moving every single thing I put in the pantry. And I'm like, what are you doing? I just spent 30 minutes unpacking all of the groceries, and now you're redoing this. Why did I even do it in the first place? It was not that nice, though. And the result was that she wound up crying in the laundry room, and I was left like, I'm the scum. I'm terrible. What am I going to do? Reflecting on it, she told me she was thinking, what did I get myself into? And what has happened over time is I have started to realize and be able to pick up on a moment in these sorts of situations in our marriage when I know that something's about to happen. I will sit back and go, man, I'm feeling frustrated. I know we're about to have an argument. It's coming. And what has been able to, sometimes I've sat back and known that's going to happen, and bada bing, bada boom, it happens. I'm so frustrated about it. And then other times, something really incredible is I've sat back and I've gone, wow, I'm feeling this. And it's probably because I've been in a hurry, or really honestly, I'm hungry. It's true. And I'm able to be so, able to realize what it is that I'm feeling, and it changes the way we interact. It changes our marriage. In some ways, it helps so much for me to live the way that God has called me to live. And so the temptation when it comes to talking about our feelings, to diving into those things, is, well, that's not maybe spiritual enough, or maybe that's kind of like over here in the woo. But someone said this, and I think it's so important when it comes to feelings and how important they are for our lives. It says this: the authentic spiritual life is not an escape from reality, but an absolute commitment to it. Jesus came as man and God, 100% man. The importance of this physical world is so important. The importance of realizing the physical things that are happening in our body and our mind, tapping into our emotions, is so important. We need to have an absolute commitment to it. David continually in the Psalms dealt with his feelings. You look into the Psalms and you see David lamenting before the Lord, coming before the Lord over and over, expressing his heart. The third thing is this: we need to integrate silence. It says this in Psalms chapter 46, verse 10. He says, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. And this is one that we probably talk about quite a bit, but it's really kind of difficult to practice, because in a moment of sitting in silence before God, there's no defense. There's no ability to put up an argument or to say the things that have been going on inside of us. In that moment of silence, we're kind of undone. I think is a great word to describe it. Everything kind of can come to the surface, and what may feel like a one-way relationship can turn into a two-way relationship really quickly in the silence. God begins to fill us with his Spirit. God begins to move in different ways, and it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's a little uncomfortable to sit in silence. But wow, does God do incredible things. We have a long history of silence in the church. It's something that has played an important role in people's relationships with God. Thomas Keating, a theologian, says this about walking in silence with the Lord. He says, hence, as we progress toward the center where God actually is waiting for us, we are naturally going to feel that we are getting worse. This warns us that the spiritual journey is not a success story or a career move. It is rather a series of humiliations of the false self. And you might say, Dylan, that sounds terrible. But what is so cool about sitting in silence and experiencing the difficulties of it is that when we walk away from that moment, we're able to put aside the false self, the person that is broken by sin and experienced all of these different things, and we're able to live God's best for our lives. God created us. He's the creator. He knows what is best for us. So silence is an important piece of it. And the last one, and I'm really excited about this one, is communion with Jesus throughout the day. And the verse is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 16 through 18. It says this: rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. This is something that we talk about, we pray continually, be with Jesus continually, but being with God, it's something very interesting that happens here. I'm reflecting on it again for a bunch of times, but reflecting on it this time, I really kind of, a new light bulb popped in my mind. And I was thinking about it, what God is wanting us to do is to develop an easy familiarity with the sacred. He wants us to develop a familiarity with him, to know his presence, to be in his presence, because our job and our role as Christians is to take the sacred and then bring it into the secular, to walk our lives with Jesus. And what happens is it is really weird and difficult to bring the sacred into the secular if you don't have an easy familiarity with the sacred. We don't know how. We're not familiar with it. It's hard to see how Jesus fits into different parts of our lives. What God is wanting to do in moments of being with him is to walk side by side with us so that we have a familiarity with who he is, his ways. And the Bible says, taste and see that the Lord is good. It's something that we just kind of know and develop and experience. And one more thought on this is that community is such an important part. Wherever it is that you're finding it, community is such an important part of this process, because in community, we join our collective knowledge of the sacred. We're coming together, and I hope that's what is happening on a Sunday, is you're not just getting Jesus from the platform. I really hope that you're able to walk in relationship with the people that are next to you, that you're talking to them, that you're having a cup of coffee, that there is community that is happening in a small group. And what is happening in those moments is conversations about, man, God has been teaching me this. I've been struggling in this area, and we're combining our knowledge of the sacred. And then we can go out to places where community is not so much, it's kind of alone. The sacred isn't really there. And we're able to bring not just our knowledge of God, but the knowledge of a church, community, a body of who God is and how he's moving and what he's doing in Asia and what he's doing all across the globe. And it becomes way bigger than ourselves. There's 4 ways. 4 of them. Make a radical decision. Feel your feelings. Integrate silence and communion with Jesus throughout the day. I think if you start to put these practices into your life, you will begin to fill up with what God is doing. And it doesn't have to turn into a doing. I'm going to end with this picture of what I think it really looks like. It can be 5 minutes in the morning with Jesus. It can be worship in your car on the way to work. It kind of looks different for everyone. But this is how I've started to picture it. And maybe it helps you picture it. Oakland has taught me a few things about Jesus. That's my daughter. She's 2. She's taught me a few things about Jesus. And one of the things is I watch her on Fridays. And on Fridays, we like to do stuff because I cannot sit in the house alone. I'm going to invite Branson and the worship team up. Let me make it sound pretty. I can't sit in the house alone with her. Like, she goes crazy, I go crazy. So we go to the zoo, we go to all these different places, but we go every time to a coffee shop. And every time we go to this coffee shop, excuse me, she gets a chocolate milk and I get some sort of latte because I need some caffeine to keep fueling the rest of the day. And we do this, and it's so awesome. We sit and talk in the coffee shop, and we do all these great things. And then one day, we were walking on our way out of the coffee shop, and there's a bench in the garden. And she looked at me and she said, "Dad, sit." Girl, this is weird. We're sitting, this is like where everyone walks by. You want to sit? Well, the conversation's not great. She's 2. We're going to be looking at the neighbors jumping on their trampoline and the cars driving by. But okay, we'll sit. It wasn't part of the plan. And we sat there. And I brought a picture. I'm going to show you. This is us on the bench. We sat there, and we were just being. It was silent. You could hear the cars going by. I just felt Jesus speak into my heart. This is what it's like to be with me. To, in the middle of a busy schedule, in the middle of a busy day, to pull up on the side of the path and to just sit. That's probably her screaming out there. And what has changed is this. Every time on Friday we go and we sit on that bench. Some things have happened. I know it's going to happen now. I plan for it. That time has become so special to me. I look forward to it. I've set up boundaries around it because I know it's going to happen. We make time for it. And I look forward to it every week. And I think what happens when we be with God is that we start to set fences around that time. Because now it's something that is really special. Once we've done it once we've pushed past the awkward, once we've pushed past the difficulties of making it happen, once we've been with God, we start to look forward to it. We start to know it's going to happen. We put fences around that time. And so this morning, I want to invite you to be with Jesus. Remember, as a collective group, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. So I've invited the worship team. We're going to sing a full song. I know, crazy. We're going to sing a full song. And in the midst of this song, I want you to take a minute. Whether you want to come down to the front, whether you need to go up against the wall, whether you need to go somewhere and just be with God. Maybe it's that you need to feel your feelings for the first time in a really long time. Maybe it's you need to be silent before Him. But I'm excited for what God is going to do.